A very good evening to one and all present here. So, what I'm going to talk about today is a new concept, and that is something that I'm going to present about creating a living museum. So, next, please. And I'm going to take the site of Chaul as a case study. So basically, we all know that museums are the best means of disseminating knowledge and basically telling everybody about the history, the past, and a vast majority of audience, a mass group in a very short time, in a very easy manner. They are the best means for dissemination of. Also, they entertain the people. They, or at the same time, they are the best means to tell the children about the past, and they are also facilitators at the same time. Now, our country has a lot of museums. In fact, the number ranges somewhere between from 1,500 to 2,000. And they are for established for different purposes. We have different thematic museums. We have the best facilities. We have been hearing about different types of museums since yesterday. We also discussed about the best museum, that is the Bihar Museum. Next. But I would like to talk about specifically 3 different types of museums, and I'm going to get into a little detail and a little definition part of it so that we can understand what I mean by a living museum. So let's start with what is a site museum. So these were the first museums which were made after the concept of museum started in the country. After excavation started, it was decided by the DG to keep a focus towards the objects, and so that those objects do not lose their context, they should be kept closer to the site. And that is why this concept of site museums began. And as you can see in the map, there are 46 site museums in the country today. And most of them are in the sites which have yielded a lot of data as far as the archaeological excavations are concerned, and most of them are also at monuments. Rather than only being the sites, they are at the monuments which already have a lot of importance. Like we can see in the case of Nalanda or Modhera for that matter, they are already at the places which have got enough importance because it is a monument. Next please. The next concept of a museum is a virtual museum, which is something which has become the buzzword of today. But if we see the definition of a virtual museum, what it means is that the museum does not exist. There's no physical space as such, but there are digitized objects, there are files, there are texts, which are shown as a museum, and you can access it online with the help of technology. It is not necessary that a physical space should exist. But today what we have is virtual tours of already existing museums. And you can see that I've put a page of the Ministry of Culture website. This has approximately 12 or 14 museums which have virtual tours. And believe you me, none of the websites work. So I tried all the websites and it shows error. It doesn't open up. Even if it opens up, there's no virtual tour as such. There's an object, there's a description. There's no tour as such which it claims to be. And then we have a concept called as a living museum. So what living museum here means that they will create a setup of history in a site, and they'll show how it existed in the past. So we don't have a living museum as such in India, but there are certain activities conducted by different museums wherein you have some dances or maybe some performances or some food activities or some festival activities that are done which show that this was how it existed in the past. So there's no museum of a living museum per se, but some activities are done by the IGNCA and others. And as Sir spoke, that we have certain museums around the world which talk about food experiences. So those can also be a part of the living museum. Next, please. But let us come to the reality of Indian museums. So in the 2011, UNESCO published a report talking about the damning report, which it was, about the exact condition of the museums in India today, and they mentioned the top 8. Now let's not get into which were the top 8, but the basic problems were the lighting and poor maintenance, signage, and we all know what the problems of museums in our country are. In spite of the great turnouts and numbers that we see, I can really tell you that in Mumbai there will not be even 50% people who know the difference between Prince of Wales and CSMVS. They think that they are 2 different places. So you have to first explain them that they are the same. So that is the condition of museums in a place like Mumbai. So, back. So how can we think of museums being an emblem of an inspirational visit? Whenever we talk about history, whenever we talk about past, yes, parents do take their children to museums, but do we propose museums as something which is our history? No, we first put monuments ahead. So what I am trying to do here is put in together a site museum, a living museum, a virtual museum, and also an archaeological site all together for you all. Next. So the site that I've chosen is Chaul. I'll tell you why Chaul in a minute, and I'll also explain the scope of this site to you. Next, please. So Chaul is a place which is located 60 kilometers far from Mumbai. It is in the Alibag Taluka of Raigad district. It is on the west coast of India, as you can see in the map, and it is located at the mouth of the Kundalika river. Now Chaul has a great antiquity, and we have it in mythology. We have the Vishnu Puran talking about it being the Revati Kshetra from where Balarama's wife came. We have excavations going on there. So excavations have gotten a lot of pottery, a lot of coins. We have coins from one of the rarest dynasties, the Mahabhojas. From here, we have the Kaneri cave inscriptions which talk about Chaul and donations coming from the merchants of Chaul. Next, please. We have different authorities, travelers from all around the world who have talked about Chaul. One of the lesser known facts about Chaul is that this was under the Marathas for a brief period of time. In fact, Shahaji owned Chaul. It was his Jagir for a brief period of time. And he himself quotes in his sources that out of the entire Konkan area that he has, which yields an annual revenue of 20 lakh gold coins, most of it comes from Chaul. So it tells you that it was a major trade center. We have the Portuguese talking about it. We have a Russian traveler, Athanius Nikitin, talking about it. And I'll come back to him once again. And then we have the entire Nizam Shahi, Portuguese, and the Maratha conflict going on for the struggle of power. So automatically this tells you that so many dynasties means a lot of religions coming here, means a lot of people, a lot of culture coming here. And economy was the main driver for all the struggle at Chaul. After the British period, we see the decline at this port. Next, please. So there are different reasons why we can take Chaul. As I said, the location definitely on the mouth of the Kundalika river, which makes it a very important location. We have a lot of heritage structures. So we have the caves, we have got forts, we have got churches, we have got mosques, we have in fact got baths, public baths, hammam khanas. We have archaeological finds, we have a fishing village present there, and we have a lot of archaeological ruins. Next, please. So this is the number of things that we have at Chaul. The green pins are all the different religious structures which belong to different religions, mosques and temples and churches, and in fact we have a lot of synagogues there. And the yellow structures are the present monuments which are under the archaeological department. So you have the Nizam Shahi Mosque, the Revdanda Fort in yellow, the Korlai Fort over there. You have a memorial dedicated to the traveler who had come, the Russian traveler who had come, Afanasy Nikitin. You have the Hinglaj caves going back to the 1st century. So all in all, the site is very important, not just with archaeological perspective, but a lot of ethnographical perspective, a lot of anthropological perspective. We see a lot of things going on here. Next, please. So what I try to think here is that when we talk about a living museum at Chaul, I try to imagine the site itself as a museum. So I will be talking about this site with a museum with no walls. If you see the site itself is huge. If you take the entire area where the pointers are marked, so this site itself will become a museum. And with the help of technology, how can we take each of these pointers as different artifacts from a museum? So each temple becomes an artifact, each mosque becomes an artifact, a fort becomes an artifact, and when a traveler goes here, how does he imagine all of that? So this will not be a virtual museum wherein you can just access it on Google. No, when you reach the site and when you open the QR code that the site says, it takes you to these two plaques when you reach the Revdanda Fort. The first plaque itself is in the fort. It is not in the fort today. It is in the CSMVS museum, but it was supposed to be in the fort, wherein it is declared that the captain of the fortress takes Saint Francis Xavier as the patron of the area. So it tells you that this is what was there. This is at the CSMVS. The second thing is the church inside the Revdanda Fort, and where you have the tombstone. This is also in the CSMVS museum, but it takes you to the site of the entire artifact and what it is, how it is all about. So not only are you getting the information of a Revdanda Fort, you're getting it at the site, and also what is not there physically present at the site, you have a virtual representation of that. Next, please. Similarly, you don't have the archaeological sites which are opened for public view at Chaul. It's very difficult to do that, and I'll talk about that also. But you can definitely have an entire display which will, your phone will just pop up a message that this is what is present here, this is what is found here. So it can be done as an app, in an app form, wherein the phone will trace your location wherever you are, and it gives you an information that, yeah, yes, this can be found here, or this was what was done here. Or else, at the same time, it can be a plugin in your Google Maps, wherein, again, as we get a pop-up message that, you're nearest to a restaurant, or you're nearest to this place, and then you get that as an option. Next, please. The first photo that you see here are the archaeological remains at Vadnagar. This is a place in Gujarat, and this is how they have conserved the entire site. Whatever excavation remains that got, the site itself has been put there. So this can also be an option what can be done to our archaeological sites, and it can itself be a part of a museum, an artifact in a museum. Now, Chaul, as I said, is a living museum. So you have food which becomes important. Now, even today at Chaul, we have people who have their own homes opened up to public for homestays, or, getting the local food. So imagine that if you're walking in a site and you find a home, that home is a part of the museum, and you get the local food there. You go ahead, you find a house which knows to speak the local language. So Chaul, the next village next to Chaul is called as Korlai, which speaks a different dialect, which speaks a kind of a Creole, which is a mix of Portuguese, of Marathi. So imagine people singing and dancing there. That becomes a living thing for you. So there are performances that are happening simultaneously. There is food being there, and you just have to scan a QR code, and all of this is available to you. Next, please. How will this happen? Number one is engaging the local people. We cannot think of having a living museum without engaging these locals. So public-private partnership becomes very, very important. And these locals will serve as docents of the museum. Rather than having separate docents, we can hire these locals itself who become the docents. If, in fact, the local guardians who will be there at the museum, the guards especially, the watchmen who are appointed at different places, they in fact know much more about the site sometimes than even the local people, because they hear different researchers, they hear different scholars coming there. So they can also talk about the site. And with minimum human intervention, we can have it there. Also, this will highlight new spaces. So rather than, making a site which already people know about, these lesser known sites, if we market them as museums itself, so it will highlight them, bring them to light, bring more attention towards them. As I said, minimum intervention, minimum cost, and space constraints. This is something that we have been debating about since yesterday, that there's understaffing, there's a lot of money problems, there's a lot of space constraints. So all this will be solved if we do this. Last slide, this is the last slide. So, last point. So, therefore, this is not a virtual museum per se, but this is a space wherein technology will be a driver to learn archaeology, history, culture, and will take hand in hand tourism, will also take hand in hand tangible culture, intangible culture, and also it will redefine the cultural aspect of a museum as a space. Thank you.